And welcome back to the Wicked Wild Podcast, a feral podcast for the uncivilized horror fans in a world where Jaime, host of the Wicked Wild Podcast, has selected a refined list of movies for her audience to experience. There is one left, and tonight is the night that we close out the Jaime playlist of horror. This week, with an amazing fairy tale. And on that, let me introduce you to our host, starting with Jaime. First and foremost, I want to say a very sincere and very genuine thank you for the list that you put together. I have had a fucking blast over the last 4 weeks of movies that I've either seen before and loved and hadn't watched in a while, or movies that I had never seen before and just laughed my tail off at some of the ridiculousness. So genuinely, thank you, sister, for sharing so many amazing movies with us this last few weeks. So
you're welcome. You're very welcome.
So one last time, as has become our tradition, give me the Jaime pairing recommendation for Pan's Labyrinth. This one should be pretty interesting. So, what are you selecting for our listeners to drink and eat with their viewing of Pan's Labyrinth?
So it's not super interesting. I think it's kind of, but like and changing it, I think, like not changing it last minute, but I think I didn't write down my pairings for anything. So I was going to ask you so we're going with grapes as our treat. Some people like to freeze them. That's okay. If you want to do that, we'll have them normal. It's a big thing, Eli, as you make.
Yeah. If you want to break your fucking teeth.
Rowdy.
No, people really, really like them.
They're delightful.
And they last longer.
That's what she said.
And I think I already picked wine. So you guys have to tell me, because I'm not a big drinker. What is he drinking the whole movie? Is it like scotch? What is he constantly drinking in this movie? It's like a darker liquor, I think. He's pouring it into the glass.
Yeah, I'm going to look up, because obviously this is based in Spain.
I don't think it was ever mentioned what it was.
See, I was thinking it was called
wine.
Liquor.
I don't think he's pouring wine into the
No, it's not. He asked for
liquor. No, it's a hard liquor of some kind.
Oh, well. Yeah.
Okay.
I speak Spanish. I don't know.
In Spain, the most popular liquors, very interesting,
what we're doing.
Are honey liquors, fruit liquors, or liqueurs, brandies. But they love a lot of fruit and herbal liquors. Liqueurs.
Did you say honey? Did you say honey in there?
Yeah, honey.
That's what we're doing. We're doing a honey liquor and grapes for our pairing for this movie.
Nice.
Which takes a hard turn from the rest of the Jaime Jams. But
it sure does. Yeah,
we'll discuss that.
This movie's fancy AF, and you better bring it, is what Jaime is saying. If you're going to watch this, you better watch it with respect in your mouth.
Uh-huh.
So, and then we have John up in Michigan. How's it going, John?
It's going.
So, as I'm watching this, obviously we've had conversations before because we're friends. But I was curious as I'm watching this, thinking of my buddy John, if you were displaced, from your home and you had to go live with a new strange family, what is the bundle of books and or comics that you would have with you at all times as sort of your comfort release from all of this awkwardness that you find in your life?
Books are tough these days, but I mean, guess you could throw Dark Knight Returns, Tim Miller books in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how comforting that would be in an awkward situation, but it'd be something.
Distracting, if nothing else.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to be there a long time, I might as well just bring the whole, at least so far, the Song of Ice and Fire books, and then just so I can disappoint myself over and over and over and over again.
Just get angry, at least angry at something you can control at that point.
Yeah, just get to the end and, it's not the end yet. Still waiting. Still waiting.
Well, hey, John, did you see he admitted what's taking him so long?
I don't know, but I see so many rumor videos. I don't think I probably saw what you're talking about. But
in an interview, they some guy was pressed him hey, why? This has been years, man. What? You're not getting any younger. What's happening? He goes, well, I'll be honest. He goes, I accidentally killed off a character that was pivotal to the ending, and I don't know how to proceed.
I fucked up.
And they're like, cool. He's like, I'm figuring it out. Great.
I mean, let's be honest. He's brought so many people back from the dead. So I mean, I mean,
Dead is not an ending.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not that hard. But anyways, but yeah, those would probably be the two collections of books to torture myself with in an awkward situation, and with some man who's intent on having some strange girl call him father. It's weird.
Very cool, I guess.
No, that part's not cool.
Things took a hard turn there. It got real in here. And then we've got Eli, our burger of Pitts, our Pittsburghian, our Pittsburgher.
I hate it. I hate it. All of it. I hate it so much.
So in your days, and I had a similar upbringing, so I am curious.
Mm-hmm.
This is a legitimate question. This is not a joke question.
Okay.
But in your days as a child, very well documented that you spent a lot of time in the wilderness, just like I did. So as a child wandering the woods by yourself, as we did, did you ever see or hear anything that you genuinely believe, and maybe to this day still believe, were magical creatures or cryptids or just something beyond the ephemeral world? What weird experiences? Because the wilderness is a hell of a thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I still to this day, we talked about on the Campfire Tale about the Haints and how like they were kind of different to the regions of Appalachia or whatever. But like in our area, a lot of the locals called them jack-o'-lanterns because like, there'd just be like these like orange glowing balls of lights. Mm-hmm. And like when I was
will-o'-wisp.
Yeah. And like when I was in high school, I remember there was this like abandoned farm. And there was a real tall hill, and like it was above, there's this old dilapidated house that a hearse was like stuck inside of. No one could figure out.
Not parked at, but inside.
Yeah, it was like in the living room. And like there was all these like local legends. Some said, oh, well, it used to be a haunted house back in like the 60s and like something happened. Like it was all this stuff, whatever. But like, but we used to go up there because you were above the tree line and you could see like for miles. And like there was a couple good like fishing spots like during the day. Like we stay out there every summer, like throughout the summer we'd go out there like on a couple days at a time and like stay and then go fishing on it. And like the one night we were like sitting by the fire and like we were like looking over the hill and we could see the orange balls of lights moving through the trees. And then we all proceeded to get up, leave our shit, because like it was a walk. It was like, I don't know, like a 35 minute walk back to my one friend's house. We fucking ran. I like pitch black dirt roads. Like the chances of us getting lost or like seriously hurt was very high. I don't think any of us spoke. We just hauled ass down the hill, back to the dirt road, and then fucking ran.
Some weird stuff that happens out there in the woods.
Yeah. And like I remember my friend's dad was like, oh, it's probably just headlights. We're like, man, there's no roads around there. Like there's no roads down that hill. Like no roads.
Didn't change the lights being there though.
Nope. Didn't change. I think that's the fastest I've ever run in my life. I've always been built like a hobbit, mixed with a cupcake. But I'm telling you, I bet you if Usain Bolt would have been there, that man been eating my fucking dust because I never ran so fast in my goddamn life.
Well, on that note, and obviously on subject to what we're going to move into here, Eli, our resident Mole King, is also our investigative journalist on all things paranormal. Mm-hmm. And we always give him an opportunity during the main show podcast to let off a little steam and give us, the unwashed masses, a quick update on what's happening in the paranormal world in a little section we call The Wicked Whispers.
Got a couple fun ones for you. We're not talking about AI tonight because by all accounts in the news, that fucking war's over. We lost. They can't control it. It's doing whatever it wants. Every week, there's more and more terrifying stories of it doing whatever it wants. So much so that Elon Musk, who a bunch of nerds praise as their champion against AI, here to find out his Neuralink was not just to help people, because the guy that got it was able to stay up for 24 hours and play Civ 6 with his mind. So that's cool. And then he was like, hey, the next iteration is going to have fucking AI in it, plug it right into your brain. So, hey, nerds, there's your savior. He's handing us to Skynet. So no point talking about AI. That war's over. It's done. We lost. But a couple fun stories this week. During a bunch of individuals and organizations have been Freedom of Information Act, the DoD and various other departments in the government about this UFO phenomenon that they kind of admitted to, then got eerily quiet for a while. And during that release, a sheet was accidentally released. They're believing it was actually a leak that states for the last couple of years, the Department of Defense has been going around the country to investigate various phenomena of the supernatural type, including, which we all fucking know what it is, an undisclosed location in Utah. Hello, folks. What's in Utah? Fucking Skinwalker Ranch. And they came out, and in the report, they're like, we did not directly identify any type of creatures or supernatural phenomenon, but we experienced phenomena we cannot explain. And people are like, what does that mean? And they're like, well, that shouldn't have been released. So that's cool. Meanwhile, this is going on. Are you guys familiar with what CERN is?
With what?
CERN. It's this like scientific community. They have the Large Hadron Collider where they take particles and like they smash them together. They invented the internet. They may have created the alternate timeline of hell that we're on. What? The internet? The internet was a concept that they created to send electronic messages to each other. And then it got expanded on by third parties and became the internet.
Okay.
There you go. The more you know. Well, anyways, they started testing the Hadron Colliders again, smashing particles, because they're trying to create dark matter because they think that could be an alternate energy source. Well, they announced findings this week that while they've been doing these experiments and super colliding these things faster than they ever have before, that they documented what they're referring to as a 4D entity that has been manipulating the particles that they've been trying to test. They don't know what it is. They can just map out its electronic signature, this kind of entity that's like fucking floating around, touching particles. So like, that's not terrifying. So now not only do we have to worry about Skynet, fucking CERN's creating Ghost to get us.
It's like somebody just read Three Body Problem. That's what happened.
Terrifying. That or Three Body Problems knew something that CERN hadn't announced yet. I don't know. But either way, not a good sign, right? So then I thought, well, since it's all doom and gloom, we're all fucking dead anyways. I have another little fun one. Do any of you enjoy cicadas?
No.
Sure.
Well, this year is the 27 year, actually the spring. So like normally typically the bigger cicada swarm, but scientists are sounding the alarm that from all their studies and testing so far, that this may be the largest, most aggressive group that will be out in modern recorded history. So they're actually nicknaming these scientists Cicada-geddon. So if one of us gets eaten by a group of cicadas, I don't even know anymore. Like, what are we supposed to do? Like AI, fucking particle ghost, cicadas. I don't know anymore. I don't know.
So quick question, and this is the most important part of this hard-hitting investigation is there anybody other than me that grew up in a region where we called them jar flies?
No.
Cicadas? Just me? Okay.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you ever called them jar flies, let me know.
We called them peepers.
No, we always.
Because their peeping noise?
We called them jar flies because you could stuff a bunch in a jar and it would literally sound like a siren.
Let me ask you this, Dave, because you also came from the country.
I did.
A lot of folks are like, oh, they don't bother you. Those fuckers bite.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Worst.
Without question.
Yeah. Not as bad as killdeer, but pretty dangerous.
If you want the download on killdeer, go back to our desert stuff, Campfire Tales, and learn when I don't know about Jamie, was completely mystified with this. This animal sounds incredibly powerful and dangerous.
Just saying, I'm here to warn the masses.
All I'll say, because I don't want to relitigate, is just go look it up.
You're welcome, world.
Well, thank you, Eli, for that. On that point, we're going to move into our actual movie review for this evening, which, as I mentioned earlier, is for Guillermo del Toro's masterpiece, come at me, bro. Pan's Labyrinth came out in 2006. As we do on the podcast, we're going to do our On the Fly Synopsis, which is a little game we like to play to get a really quick, very surface level synopsis for the movie to kick off the conversation. And as I believe either I was or Jamie was, I couldn't remember. Let's just be honest on the last one, who did the synopsis last time. But
I have not done it in a long time, so it was not me.
Well, because this is your last of your playlist, I chose you as my interviewee.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so,
I can't remember the last time I did a synopsis.
So in every fairy tale, with a young child being tasked with some monumental task, there's always a mythical being acting as a guide. So when you were a child, you can think back there, who would you have most enjoyed having as your wise old helper, some mythical creature to help you along as you're trying to navigate the Fae? So here's your three options.
Okay.
A fairy.
Okay.
A unicorn.
Okay.
Or a witch.
Okay. There's an easy answer here because I'm not sure you knew this, but young Jamie, as well as, I'm not saying my age right now, even though my birthday is right now.
Present Jamie.
I'm obsessed with unicorns. So it would have 100% been a unicorn. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, that's me.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
I will once again be giving the synopsis.
Hold on a second.
I had no idea. Honestly,
I knew you didn't know, actually. I kind of could tell. Yeah, no, I've been, unicorns are a big part of especially young Jamie. But
that's why we're close friends. Because that's what I would have chosen.
Which one was I?
I mean,
which one was I?
How many times have you asked that question and gotten an answer, Eli?
We have discussed, Dave, not that this means that you would know it's one of my favorite, but The Last Unicorn is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, that's true. We did
and I'm getting that tattoo. But so we're going unicorns all the way here.
So Pan's Labyrinth, 2006 movie, Guillermo del Toro. It's one of three in a very important trilogy to Guillermo about the Civil War in Spain. Obviously, this is an area of history that is very impactful for him and his culture. In this specific one, this is the feminine story of his trilogy that he's sharing with us, where a young girl is moving to the country with her mom. We don't know what happened, but something has happened to her father. She is orphaned on that side. Her mother is pregnant with a child from another man who we meet as Captain Vital, who is our anti-hero, our villain of this story. While she's there, she because of the misery and despair of her situation, she becomes obsessed with the fairy tales that she has brought with her. She has a bundle of books she's brought with her. While she's there, she actually has an experience with a fairy. It transfigures in front of her, shares information with her about who she actually is, like her true identity as the princess of the underworld. Throughout the movie, we see her being tasked with three very important tasks and the impact of her, I wouldn't say success, but her experience of trying to navigate those ordeals. Meeting Pan, the great faun, and then the toad, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and then obviously, what is his name? I know he has an official name as the Pale Man, but we'll talk about what he actually represents through this too. But the story is genuinely about her and her experience of navigating through the Fae. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
Well, on that point, Jamie, this is your big ender. This is your final movie in your playlist. So tell me, what it took, why this is the movie that you wanted to end on, because obviously you started with one that you knew we all loved, or at least you expected we all loved. Then you threw in some stuff that I don't care if you like it or not. These are important to me as a person, your genuine picks. And then you finally landed on Pan's Labyrinth. Is that because it was also a movie that you thought that we all cared about, or because you didn't care what we thought, this is the movie that was so important to you that you wanted to share with your people?
So closer to the second. However, I'm pretty confident. I'm not sure about John, but I'm confident in you and Eli that you also love this movie. But when I made my list, of movies. Obviously, this takes a hard turn from the Jaime movies, which we're all, including Evil Dead, which we all love, but we're all just buckets of blood, gore, mayhem, and Jaime movies when it comes to horror. Now, Pan's Labyrinth, but it is not horror, so to speak. It's fantasy, but it's been on our list, and it's this recording was I'm not good at lying, so we did shift one day, but this recording was falling on my birthday. So I was going with my birthday is tomorrow, but I was going with one of my all-time favorite movies. Doesn't matter that it's horror or not, because it is on our list.
Hugely important either way.
So yeah, so I was closing it out with this movie as a treat to myself and others, because I'm pretty sure this is a beloved movie. But I don't care either way, like Jason. So yeah, so that's kind of my reasoning for picking it. Like I said, it's definitely different than my other picks. It's we would have thought I would close this out with something on brand, Terrifier, if it was on our list. But it's besides me loving buckets of blood, I also really do love when a movie, and me specifically because I'm dead inside, but when like a movie literally makes me feel, and even more so when it breaks my heart. I'm just a depressing emo human being. So when a movie consistently that I've been watching for how many years? This is almost 20 years old. Let's not even say that. When it has consistently been breaking my heart for almost 20 years, or it like hits you the same way for almost 20 years, that's a good movie. I saw this when it came out in theaters. We'll do the backstory. I saw this when it came out in theaters. I went with friends, I think from my job at the time, which was MTV. And we went, and I think it was a few mixed reactions, but I love this movie from the moment I left the theater. I have made many people watch this movie, whether they like it or not. I used to watch it to go to sleep. I used to, it's just like something that, it's another one of those comfort movies. We've discussed comfort movies a bunch of times. This is one of them for me. I'm a big fan of Del Toro, at the very least visually. I've seen most, I can't say all, and I know he's different capacities where he's just producer, or he's what, his name is just thrown on a lot of shit, so it's hard, but his true like directorial, or even if I'm not so in love with them, I can get lost in them visually. This movie is a perfect example of that, but this movie is also, to me, it's beautiful, it's haunting, it's weird, it's emotional, it's just like all around amazing. So this is not only one of my favorites, my favorite by him. You know what I mean? So I think I could be speaking out of turn. I would say that Pan's Labyrinth is probably one of his most popular, right? If not, like, I know, yeah, I know Shape of Water won an Oscar, but what I mean is, like, I think Pan's Labyrinth is one of the most like popular of his movies. Mm-hmm. Shape of Water was fine. I mean, I don't know, but we don't have to get into the fish sex now. It's not. It's like not.
I wish you never said that sentence.
That's what that movie is. Anyway, so I'm sorry. We're gonna get into the actual movie. That's basically why I chose it. That's my backstory in seeing it. I have been watching it ever since. It's I actually hadn't watched it in like a little bit of time, so it was nice to put it on for this past weekend and watch it. But that's my kind of short little synopsis on why this movie, if it even answered the question.
Thank you, Jaime. So before I move on, because you had mentioned something about this is a movie you share with a lot of people, obviously, but because I have 2 or 3 of these movies myself, is this one of the movies in the Jaime archive that you actually use to gauge if somebody is on Jaime's page or not? Because we all have those kind of movies.
So kind of, but I also, yes, but I think more of an emotional page, because I get like, so when I saw this in theaters, and here's like even another story, like my dad is one of the people I made watch this back in the day. My dad and I, we used to watch a lot of movies together, whether we went to see things together or I would, and through until adulthood, you know what I mean? Like, it's not for my dad, and I love my dad to death. So it's like, it is kind of like a gauge. I would say it's more of an emotional gauge. Like if I see someone react to it, at least emotionally the correct way, but it's weird if you're like, just like my dad's a different moviegoer than me, so that's a bit
Right, exactly. He's an action
and like
guy.
in
You've
your
said that
face,
before.
yeah, kind of like just surface, enjoyment movies, like that's his kind of thing. So yeah, I guess though, if you are into movies and into, I do gauge a little bit. I'm not gonna like hate someone for not liking it, but I might judge you.
You're gonna question them.
Yeah, the poster is like is art in my apartment. Like it's like hanging in a prominent space. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe judge a little bit, but
that's okay. We all judge each other all the time. So I mean, that's how we choose friends and enemies. That's just the way the world works. So on that point, John, did you see this in theaters? Kind of what has been your experience with this movie and your latest watch? What did you think of it?
That's funny you say latest because I had never watched it until today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Way to bury the lead, dude. I had no idea.
Fuck, I had no idea
so excited
either.
now.
Oh my god,
Well,
I just assumed because like everybody has.
No, it's been on the list forever, and it's just every time I've tried, it's either gone or
That's
when
fantastic.
it's there, I'm just not in the mood. But yeah, no, definitely. This was not what it's not as advertised at all. For what I got out of it. But it's a great movie. I mean, it's well shot. It plays on a lot. I felt like a lot of homages to Jim Henson's Labyrinth personally.
Yeah.
A lot of like weird, creepy stuff and definite references. And I'm sure the Jim Henson Labyrinth is basically pulled from all the other fairy tale books about labyrinths anyways. But for me, this felt very, very close to that for the certain moments. I was disappointed in the amount of Labyrinth. That will put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
The monsters, not enough of them. Needed more.
Needed more creatures.
Yes. I wasn't expecting a Hellboy level of monsters and weird stuff, but I was expecting more than what we got. However, what we got was really impactful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot more serious than I was expecting in terms of not like top subject matter, but just the exact subject matter and the amount of violence mixed in with like this child adventure, which is, I mean, definitely old world fairy tale, definitely like True Grimm's fairy tale. So, but yeah, no, it was good. It was good. So thanks, Jamie.
That's awesome.
I can't believe you never saw it. That's kind of exciting. I kind of wish I knew.
A gift to the rest of us. So, John, just as because this was my experience with the movie and we haven't gotten there yet, but is the moment that you realized this was heavier than you thought it would be, is that the moment that that Captain Vidal caves in the soldier's skull?
Oh yeah.
That's the moment.
It takes a hard turn at that moment.
That's the moment that I remembered is rated R too.
Exactly.
I was just like, why is this movie rated R? And then it just like, oh wait, that's right. And then it continues, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have child murder and caving in skulls. What more do you want in a movie?
Exactly. All right, Eli, was this your first watch of this movie?
Well, actually, I've never seen it. No, it's not my first watch. I'll tell you, I did not see it in theaters. I know when like it kind of was advertised at first. I thought it was going to be more kid-like, so I kind of let it go by. And then when I was in college, one of my professors who like I was actually taking one of his like lore classes, and he knew how much I was into this stuff. He was like, we were talking somehow, like he brought up like, have you ever seen it? I'm like, no. He's like, you need to watch this. And he actually loaned me his DVD copy. So that weekend, my roommate like went out for the night. I was a nerd, so I didn't really do that stuff. And I popped that DVD in my Xbox 360.
Wow.
That's how I watched it this time, but it was an Xbox Series, whatever the new one.
Yeah. And turned the lights off, and I loved this movie from the beginning. It's the first time I watched it, and like it's one of those movies that every time you watch it, there's something more there, and it's this tragically sad, beautiful tale, and like where I think where it got scary for me is like there's like three distinct layers to this movie that he was able to wove together that like didn't impede each other. And like I know we talked to you like about layers and like undertones, and like a lot of times I'm like, well, like they get in front of each other and they mess up. Like Del Toro was so able to like. The only other movie I've ever seen him do this in was The Devil's Backbone, which is part of the trilogy as well. But it like there's this whole like kind of just on the surface like, wow, this girl's got this like terrifying home life, if you call it, and then she's like dealing with these like tests, and then there's this layer of, well, is that real, or is that just her dealing with like the horror around her of like real life and like a war? And then there's this like whole third layer where he weaves in Greek mythology in ways that like it's taken me multiple rewatches to see. And like, especially if you're familiar with Pan and how much of a kind of a duality god he was and a dickhead, and kind of knowing like from the beginning, if Pan was real and not a figment of imagination, and like what the end game was going to be,
what
like
a dangerous MFer he is.
Yeah, and like that was where the real horror came in, because like she was doomed from the moment they stepped foot on that land. And like what happened, like, and if you know about Pan, like what really happened to her is terribly sad, because she wasn't going to win either way. Like it's just like he did it so well. And like in my mind, like Pan's Labyrinth is probably one of the most well-written stories in like modern cinema. I'd say I'd argue that point a lot. And they took really good care to set up like the makeup and to, you know, making sure they didn't rely a lot on CG, and like which I thought added to it. You got my boy Doug Jones, which his monster, like that's one people refer to quite a bit.
Doug Jonesing it up.
Doug Jonesing it up with his Doug Jones hands. That man's hands have minds of their own, I swear.
They're magical, literally.
Yeah, like it looks so well. And then like he somehow does this thing where like, depending on like how you kind of fall with what the ending is, where it's like beautifully kind of sad, but then like also horrific, depending on like what you believe is happening in the movie. Like he just like this was like masterclass level writing. Like it's just this movie's so good. Like it has no, like it's not something you would like. This, it almost reminds me, it was like written almost like how you like imagine like classically written stuff is, like almost like Shakespearean, almost how well he did with it. Like it's just so good. I love this movie all around. This is one of those few movies I can say I don't find any faults.
You have no contempt.
None. I don't know.
Shocking.
If I could, like, I honestly don't think I have
no qualms,
any complaints about this. Like the movie.
No notes for the director.
No notes.
No. Like this movie. Honestly, the only complaints I would have is the company that, I've found like some versions I've watched, for some reason they have the audio of their voices turned up real loud. I don't know. Like I found some versions like that, which isn't like his fault. Like it's just like I don't know. Off. Like the mixes are like weird in some versions. Like even today, like I rented it through Amazon, and like there were parts where like it would get loud, but not like they were projecting. Like someone was like turn up the volume. Like I don't know what that is, but like other than that, but that's not Del Toro, the story, or like any of the actors or anything. This movie's a chef's kiss.
Perfect. So for me, when this movie came out, it came out, like I said, in 2006. It had a huge, and I don't know if y'all remember, it had a huge marketing campaign. Like they were.
That must be why I
everywhere.
saw it.
So I was very excited for it. I did see it in theaters. And as soon as I saw it, I literally fell in love with the vision that Guillermo del Toro, this director that I'd never heard of, had. Like his capacity to show emotion and to show atmosphere blew me away. I had never seen the Fae really represented in a way that I thought was legitimate and had an aspect of reality. I mean, it's the Fae, so the reality has to be sort of dreamlike in the way it's done. But he has such a visual gift in his creature design and his characters and his atmosphere that I had never seen anything like that before. This immediately reminded me. And remember, in 2006, from 2000 to 2010 is what I call sort of the the golden age of cinema for all the book fantasy nerds. I mean, we had just finished Lord of the Rings. We were right in the middle of Harry Potter, and then we get movies like this from Guillermo del Toro. We're about to get Hellboy 2, but there were so many really incredible new directors and filmmakers that were hitting the scene that were bookish. Like they were book directors. Like they told stories the way books told stories. And he is absolutely that kind of guy. And the heroine in this story is on par in my book. And I've argued this with a couple of people as being some of the my very favorite fairy tale characters on the same par as Alice or Peter Pan and Wendy or Chihiro from Miyazaki or Frodo from Lord of the Rings. What Ophelia brings to this is such a gravity of knowing how hopeless her situation is, and then still having hope for this fantasy world, this fae world that she we'll talk more about this in a minute. I have a sense that Ophelia understands that either that's a lie or it's her doom, but given the options she has, she'll still embrace that over sort of the world around her, the mundane that she's kind of finding herself in. And I mentioned earlier when Jaime was talking about it, this is a trilogy movie for Guillermo del Toro, and this is well established at this point because the Spanish Civil War is something that was hugely impactful to him, understanding that he grew up in Mexico, but the history of Spain is something that's hugely impactful on his people and the people that came there at this time during World War II when the Civil War happened. And The Devil's Backbone, which I went and watched almost immediately after seeing Pan's Labyrinth, is sort of the masculine perspective as a child on that event. And then you have this, which is very much the feminine perspective on the Civil War and that event. I mean, everything in here is Ovarian. I mean, from the set dressing to the characters, it's all very Ovarian. And then you have the third, which is Pinocchio, which is sort of his resolution of those events, within that culture. And I'm not Spanish, so I can't speak into that culture. But Pinocchio, apparently, the Guillermo del Toro version of Pinocchio was sort of him resolving his emotions and his pain through what happened in the Spanish Civil War. So those three movies, when you watch them, you have a very clear understanding of, as good as Hellboy is, and as well executed as it is, the storytelling in these three movies is just at a different level because it's emotionally tied to his identity as a human being and sort of what's important to him. I think this movie and those other two movies, everything in that trilogy, they are the very definition of what escapism is. At least the kind of escapism that Dave appreciates and enjoys is the mundane world is a shitty place to live in. It would be nice if we had these sort of escapisms, whether they're ghosts or fairies or, little puppet men. If we had some sort of magic to believe in above and beyond our mundane circumstances. Guillermo is so gifted at doing that, of giving sort of what that would look like if it was real, or what that picture of that escapism. Those are my overall thoughts, and we'll get into sort of breaking down some of the scenes. But this movie, and I'll say, having watched Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth, which are like I said, I think are the two main story perspectives on these events of the Civil War, I actually relate more to Pan's Labyrinth because it's the first one I saw, and I really love Ophelia as a main character because not only is she flawed, but she's also very reckless in the way she relates to the things that are going on around her. But she's reckless in the way a child's reckless. She's not malicious. She's just being careless. Like, whether you have kids as a parent or you were a kid, you can relate to the fact of I've been starving for 2 weeks and there's a table full of food here and these grapes are the size of my fist. I'm going to put one in my mouth. So it's never that she's malicious or evil. It's just that she's a child and she's careless. But the gravity and the impact of those decisions that Pan has with her is, no, you have ruined your future because you ate 2 grapes. And having that kind of expressed upon a child is really impactful for me. It's sort of emotional for me as I think about it. So that's my overall thoughts. I want to get in the bigger conversation. I am super stoked and nearly turgid that John has never seen this movie. I'm looking forward to talking with him about this, but I do want to give Jaime the opportunity to open up the conversation, kind of start off where she wants.
I mean, we could jump right into anything. I was just going to share, like, when I saw the movie is one of the few things I wrote down, because I didn't write a lot about this in general, just because, I don't know. I was just enjoying it. I wasn't really like taking notes on it, and because I've seen it a bunch of times. But like when I did see this, one thing I do remember, and this just is like the example of, you know, certain movies are not for certain people. But like I said, I saw it with a group of people. Don't know the exact number. Let's just say there was 6 of us, give or take. But you know, one of my friends, from what I remember, like the scene, you know, the movie is progressing and we're starting to get into it, and the scene where she goes into the tree with the frog is like one of the first fantasy scenes, if you will, besides meeting the fawn and whatever, like, you know, the tree is the first, it's the first task. So it's the first like fantasy element, especially fantasy element. And like the frog, you know, we can go into like does its thing and whatever and throws a thing. And like, I literally in the movie theater, I have a friend who just goes, "What am I watching?" Like, so it's just like, you know, it's a movie that, as much as we may all love it, and I hope John did, but like as much as we all, you know, it's not for everybody. And it's whether you can't appreciate one of the many layers or angles of this movie, or even take it as a fantasy and just watch it as a sheer, you know, I don't know, but it's just like, it's funny because like I remember that, and my dad had a similar opinion when watching the movie. But
it is strange. I mean, as this movie is kind of said, it's unapologetic and strange.
It's strange. It's a fantasy. You know what I mean? Like, and it's part of like, what world would she be in if it wasn't strange? You know what I mean? Like, what escape is it? What would she be escaping to if it wasn't strange? You know, like we don't need just another world of what she's going through in the literal, you know, in the real world. It
has to be different.
Yeah. I wish I had this world. I literally like said that when I was done watching it. Like, I wish I could escape to this world. Granted, it wasn't the greatest either, but you know, sometimes it's better than real life.
Well, and what I remember from 2006 is this was at the very heart of emo culture at the time. Like, this was a very important movie to the scene people.
Are you saying something about me?
No, I'm just saying that not just you, but to an entire community of people, this movie resonated, which was powerful.
Yeah.
Myself included, obviously.
No, it's funny because Devil's Backbone has always been on my list, and I have not seen it, as we can all guess, but I know we will be watching it. I have seen Pinocchio, though, as you mentioned, the new Pinocchio, and
it's so much more hopeful.
I still ended that movie in hysterics, though, like, because as I do with most, like,
because that's what Guillermo do.
Because that's what he does, and that's why I love him so much. I guess he rips my heart. I'm so fucking emo. So he rips my heart out and steps on it.
Where are you?
Anyway, I don't know like where I have no specific point to like jump off, so I just, you know, I want anybody to share any thoughts they were thinking.
So I mentioned some of my favorites, obviously, really, with, you know, Miyazaki and nearly all of the Miyazaki movies. As you enter into the fantasy world, you're attached to usually a female, always a child, somebody who has no agency or no capability within themselves, entering into a magical situation, whether it's Howl's Moving Castle or Spirited Away or My Neighbor Totoro. I love his whole library because there is this aspect of the way you enter into his stories is through this person who has no power in and of themselves. And as I was thinking about that, especially as I was watching this movie, because this is a great portrayal of that, whether, like I said, just like Alice in Wonderland or Peter Pan and Wendy, Why are so many great fairy tales written around a young person, many times a girl, who is painfully aware of their own hopeless circumstances? Like, why is that the most provocative jumping off point for some of our favorite fairy tales?
No skepticism, bro. Even if a child is aware of how hopeless is around them, that skepticism is there that when a magical opportunity presents itself, they're all
You're gonna take it. Yeah, you got.
they're gonna take it. They're like,
Because
oh,
everything has to be
life
better
on-
than what I
Yeah.
have.
And you're innocent, and you just believe it. You wholeheartedly believe that there's.
Yeah.
Mhm.
oh,
And
life on-
we as a movie audience, that's where we want to jump off. Like, even with something as commercial as Harry Potter, we want somebody to tell us it's okay to just turn your brain off and believe. Just accept what's happening on the screen.
Well, I mean, think back, because like it's she gets bleaker every year, you know what I mean? And like this, and like with all the stories, you want a happy ending. And like that's why I always think it's like when you really get in the debate about especially the ending of this movie, you could always tell what type of person, or maybe that's not the right word, the kind of belief structure of a person to how they think this movie ends.
There's no happy ending to this movie. No matter how you argue this movie, there's no happy ending to this movie.
Well,
It's
no,
why
like-
it's a
Now we
great
know how
movie.
Jamie feels.
That's why. Well, no, I'm the same way. But there are people that be like, "Oh, well, no, she went home.
No, she
Like it
didn't.
worked."
No, she told herself she went home. This poor
Yeah.
girl is laying, dying on a.
Yeah,
blue-
She did? Is that what you're saying?
Or
she dead on a cold rock in the blue because this movie is so blue. I love
or
it.
there's even a
So
darker kind of ending with Pan, if you want to get into that. But like, there are people that like, "Oh, it all worked out for her. Like she escaped," and it's like, you're a fucking fool.
Then you
Yeah.
don't want to tell those people that Santa Claus isn't real.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or like, yeah, the tooth fairy didn't exchange your money. Like it's or your teeth for money. Like it's like it where, and like I especially this one, because like I mean there are other ones that kind of like hint and like, or even like you can kind of have that discussion, whereas like where like Del Toro took it another level was like, not only did he put in that debate of, well, it's A or B, he, for the nerds, gave a third one. It's like, it's A, B, or like worst A. And it's like, oh my God. So like, it like,
It's A, B, or Delta.
yeah, like it's not great. Like, and like, I find that like it cracks me up. Like when you kind of debate this movie, like there are those people that are like, oh, she's the moon princess now. Like it's fine. It's fine. You're like, you keep telling yourself that, and maybe the Easter Bunny will bring you some extra chocolate this year. Fucking idiot.
I mean, the only way that's like a happy ending is if I'm sorry. It's well-known fact that Jamie, I'm just saying this, is non-religious and doesn't believe in like an afterlife and whatever. So I'm sorry. I'm taking that out for a second because I don't believe like she's going to a heaven or anything like that. But so what I'm going to say is like there's only a positive ending if like you think, and what you say to people when they're like in pain, oh, their suffering is over. That's the only happy ending to this, is like if you're just like, well, she's no longer
She's not
suffering.
gonna
She's
suffer
in a better
anymore.
place. She's in a better place, which is just not here anymore. I get it for her. Like her going to a better place is seeing this conclusion, seeing that she ends up where she's supposed to be. Point being is though, she's not actually going there. And
Nope.
Yeah.
it's not a happy ending, which is why it's so fucking good. I'm sorry. Like, I don't mean it like she deserves this girl. I cry my eyes out at the end of this movie 20 years later. And we know me and we know how I feel about children and we know how I feel about like,
But this
is
child
not-
is different.
this movie breaks your heart. And that fucking song, it's one of my favorite songs like ever, like the lullaby. But like, I cannot hear one note of that song without just like wanting to just like crawl into a fetal position and just start crying. But like,
But it's a cathartic cry, right?
it's anyway, yeah. I mean, this movie, like, it doesn't end up well for anybody. Maybe Mercedes, I guess, and her brother lives too, right? The two of them live. So I guess we got, and she's got a new baby by her side.
I love her last line of,
oh my
he
God,
won't
it's
even
so
know you
good.
exist.
It's one of the best lines of like a movie. And I don't mean that as in like a line that people quote, or it is just like one of the like best moments of a movie is her telling this man that's so full of pride and only cares about whatever, that like his son is just not even going to know he exists.
Yeah.
That's it. And then shooting him right in the face. So he can't even, like, that's it.
Yeah. The end. Yeah. As I was thinking about it, I agree completely with what y'all are saying. I would also say, as an audience member who in and of myself have no agency within the story that a director wants to tell me, I think it's very provocative and immersive for me to have a situation where the main character that I'm being tied to is in that same situation. Like, they have no control. I cannot expect them to act reasonably or logically or with any sort of power within the story that's being told. I think there's just an area there that when you're tied to a child who's going through all of this, that is almost the most compelling character for an audience who is just perceiving and viewing the happenings of a story to enter a story. And I think Guillermo recognizes that and does a really unique and powerful job of taking the audience and saying, you're not going to be able to control any of the things that are happening, but I'm going to take you on a story journey that is going to pay off in some way. And I think that this story does not pay off the way I, as an audience, want it to, but that's the fucking point. I mean, that's what Guillermo's saying about the events, whether it's the historical events or the events of every fairy tale that has actually ever been told. And we'll talk about it. And, it's sort of my last question of the ending. We'll get there. We've got to get there. But, I think Guillermo understands what a fairy tale actually is. It is beyond horror, is what a fairy tale is.
Well, then if you add in the Greek elements of it, of let's say Pan's real and it's actually Pan, not only did she have no control, she was marked from the beginning and was basically led like a calf to slaughter, which is even fucking sadder because she had a fate worse than what was in the real world. Like, it's on all levels. He's like, I'm going to fuck these people up. You gonna watch this movie? Prepare to get fucked. And like, he just tells it like, it's you almost, the way he tells a story and you go along for the ride, he almost turns you into Ophelia. Cause like, no one thinks that's going to be the ending when they get there. You may not think it's going to be a good ending, but you don't think it's going to be that fucking ending.
No, but in a way, there's no way. And this might be a dumb statement. You guys can laugh at me or yell at me, but like, there's in this movie, following Ophelia, following her do these tasks and her making her decisions and and then whether they pay off or not, she can't. Because it's an escapism, it's a fantasy world. She can't get her happy ending unless she goes insane or dies. Like, because she can't.
There is no
she
win.
can't get to this world. She can't win in her brain. Like, she's reading these. She is a reader. She's into fantasy. She's into storytelling. She's creating this fantasy world, this escapism, this imaginary friend, if you will. I'm just going pure. Like, people do that. Kids do that. But like, she can't actually fully get there unless like,
you just hit the nail on the head, because like part of the Greek stuffness, that's the core.
I don't know that stuff. Okay, yeah,
right, but like that's the core of every Greek tale. It's fate versus destiny, and either her destiny was become the moon princess, or her fate was to fucking end how it ended.
Yeah,
and like that's like you just, Jamie. I tell you what, if I could, gold star right on you.
Oh yay! I was like those little charts on the wall. I have one going now. Thank you.
Oh, you have so many for me now. I just feel like I'm just giving you extra for funsies.
Yeah. Teacher's favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So, sort of the next thing that I wanted to kind of talk about is Guillermo del Toro as a storyteller and as a filmmaker. So, what is it about? Because yes, he's had some stinkers recently, but they're few and far between. I mean, when you go to see and I don't mean a presented by piece of shit.
That's the thing. His name is now thrown on things, and I can't tell.
I mean, an actual Guillermo del Toro movie. You know, even up into Crimson Peak, which I enjoyed. It was not on the same level as Pan's Labyrinth, but at the same time, you could see the Guillermo del Toro-ness
and that one's beautiful. That might be one of the most beautiful to me because it's gothic and it's, you know, that's a beautiful
and
movie.
That's sort of my point. What is it about his universes that is so immersive and so completely fantastical? Like, I don't know. I can't articulate another filmmaker who does what Guillermo does.
I can. It's Jamie's other obsession is Tim Burton, old Tim Burton. So here's the thing.
Yeah, but
and I don't mean to say no, it's different. But I guess what I'm saying is like those are two directors that visually I adore. Mm-hmm. Tim Burton goes a little bit further, old Tim Burton, where he makes all my favorite movies of my, you know, Edward Scissorhands, Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice. Mm-hmm. Like these are the first two Batmans. Like these are my favorite movies of all time. Granted, whatever. But he's got a look and a style different from Del Toro. But like they are worlds that I, Jamie, want to exist in. And Tim Burton's like my gothic world that I want to exist in. Like I want to live in a Tim Burton set piece.
In Tim Burton, New York.
And if I can't live there, it's one of Del Toro's worlds. His change up a little bit, but it's always got this like beautiful fantasy feel, even when he's dealing with real world shit. I mean, to a degree. Like this movie presents two totally different views. We have the whole fantasy world, and then we have war Spain going on at the same time. Yet they're both all blue, by the way, at all times. Yeah. Everything is, you know.
And that's the interesting thing. Pan's Labyrinth and Pacific Rim are two totally different movies, but I can totally accept that they exist in the same universe. Because they have a visual sort of signature that is shared between the two.
He does that thing, like, and they can be different, like you just said, or even in Pan's Labyrinth, they could be very different, but they're still Del Toro. Like there's no way you watch I only saw it once, but there's no way you even watch Shape of Water and don't know it's Del Toro. And like that also is set in a very, take the fish man out of it. It's a realistic, just a regular, you know what I mean? It's not
a mundane story.
Sorry, it's fantasy, but you know what I mean? It's like set in the real world in a real time and like, you know, with real things and just like, you still know it's him. Crimson Peak to me, like we mentioned, is one of the more fantastical, and which is why I find it so beautiful because it's just the more, like we said, like gothic horror ghost story of the, I've only seen parts of like Mama. I don't, you know, it's not, I know, but I know, I see your face. That's why I've only seen parts of it. But they all feel Hellboy. I mean, we've talked about it, but like, you know, they all like.
Yeah, for me, Hellboy is the one that I go back to the most because I love comics, and that is such an unbelievable, because if you read the Hellboy comics and thought somebody was going to make that film, you're like, oh, that's going to be a piece of shit. Mm-hmm. And then you see it like, wow, this guy got the assignment and he recognized what he was supposed to do.
You saw that play out in real life with the new Hellboy. Yeah. Like it was a piece of shit. But like, you know what I mean? Like, but Del Toro was able to like take those two films, and even like the second one, which was more fantastical, I would say, than the first. But like it, like I think like you can tell because of how well the first one did. Like he was able to make the second one more his own, and like I wish they would have done a third one. Yeah, and kind of ended that trilogy. But like you can see the difference where like the second one, they're still trying to pull like kind of those fairy tale monsters that Hellboy fought sometimes, and like or in the remake, like it just didn't work.
Right,
it just didn't work. Where like Del Toro can tell, like he knows how to tell the stories, and he also knows how to like he knows how to utilize his settings. Because like even if you look at like Pan's Labyrinth, there's really not a lot of change in settings. Like you're either in the labyrinth, you're outside, or you're in like this guy wherever their base is. That's almost labyrinth, and so much so that like it's made to believe that the labyrinth is underneath it. When she goes to the Pale Man, but like you're basically in one of three areas at all times, and like, but he's able to use those areas to like push the story and like even kind of influence like your feelings of how things are. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's a distinction that doesn't get talked about a lot. I mean, people don't recognize, and he's related or he's compared to, and sometimes to directors like Peter Jackson. And I love Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
But just understand, Guillermo del Toro started blocking and storyboarding and writing this story that came out in 2006. He started writing this stuff and sketching it out in 1993.
Yeah.
Like he has a whole lot of front end stuff that he feels like is part of his process that he needs to go through as an artist before he can get to the point that he can actually start casting and building an actual film. And that's a long runway. And obviously it's not commercially viable, but I don't think that Guillermo cares. I don't think that he as a storyteller really has a lot of concern with, I've got to churn out X number of movies in so much time. If he tells 3 great stories over 20 years, he's much happier than if he had told 10 stories over the same amount of time. That's just my opinion of him. I just feel like, and one of the things I love about this movie is when I found out that, obviously this is a Spanish with an English subtitle. While he was producing this movie, because he had already done Devil's Backbone, there were already Hollywood studios coming to him and say, we'll give you millions of dollars if you'll translate this into English and sell it as an English movie. And he said, no, this is my story. It's a Spanish story. I'm not going to present it as a Hollywood movie just to make more money. Like, as an artist, he had sort of a no compromise. I understand what you want to do with my story. My story ain't for that, bro. Kind of position.
I have a fun fact to go with that position too. Just a minor fun fact. Doug Jones, who is an American actor, but is in all Del Toro movies. Maybe not all, but we all know he's in most of them. In fact, 2 roles in this movie, if you did not know. Yeah. Doesn't speak Spanish, but did all his lines in Spanish anyway, even though they were dubbing over him with a Spanish actor. For authenticity and so that they can mimic his so that they could easily dub over him. So Doug Jones, who does not speak Spanish, and from what I read, thought he would ruin the movie because he does not speak Spanish and didn't know if he could, literally did the whole dialogue in Spanish and practice it. So that, though that is not his voice in the movie.
But what I love about Doug Jones and what I understand is that he learned Spanish so that he could receive script cues from Ophelia in order to
that too, I think. Yeah, that too, I think. But can we take a moment to say how Doug Jones is treasure. The most? He really is. I can't.
Everything he touches,
100%.
except for one. Was he the? I think he was.
What do you want me?
Did he do the pee pee poo poo man?
What?
The Goodbye Man, or the fuck that shit stuff was called?
Man.
Bye
I don't
Man. Which I don't blame him for that. Yes, it was. He was the Bye Man. Oh. I don't blame him for that piece of shit.
Paycheck.
For a paycheck, yeah. He's first of all, as a creature actor, and he
no one
plays
on this
a lot
planet
of cool ones. Yeah.
Has more control of his own body than Doug Jones does.
Oh, for sure. I don't blame him for that movie. He probably didn't realize how bad it was. He's like, they gave the premise. He's like, great. But if you look at everything he does, he puts his whole heart and soul. Because when he plays the Count and What We Do in the Shadows.
God, he's so fucking good.
One of my favorite roles of him.
He's him. At least we get to see him in that. Yeah. He is so fucking good. He is one of the best secondary characters in that.
And then and that's a deep cut for those that don't know. If you don't know who Doug Jones is, there's a whole group of people that are going ape shit when that scene happens.
Oh, when they're on the drug blood in the bar and he has that little squeaky toy. And then you think he's gone, and then they bring him back, and he's in love with that demon thing, and they have a house together.
They're roommates.
Oh my god! Every time he's on that show, it just kills me. I love it so much.
He's an amazing. I will not argue. Doug Jones is a national treasure. Above all, he is my favorite. But Troy James, the new guy that's doing all these things, may have more control over his body than Doug because he's that contortionist guy.
Yeah.
If you watch a movie, at this point, if you watch a movie, it is either Doug Jones if they paid the big bucks, it's Javier Botet behind it if he doesn't have to do like actual acting, kind of like speaking, and then it's Troy James if it involves any kind of fucking flexibility. And those are now the skinny, tall men playing monsters in like movies. And Pale Man is one of my favorite creatures of all time.
Was it Troy Jones in Antlers? I think it was, wasn't it? Wasn't he articulating the creature?
You're gonna make me do something I swore I'd never do again.
I'll look at it.
You're gonna make me do something
I think it was
never again.
He's getting there before me because I was like, can we take a moment while we're looking up who played the monster in Antlers? That I looked up what Ophelia is in now, and I could not believe she was in that Black Friday movie that came out like 2 years ago. With I did not know that was her. I watched it because it's got Bruce Campbell in it. I did not know that was her at all. I don't see anybody playing that.
Yeah, it looks like the creature actor was somebody
Dorian Kingy.
Okay.
So good. I think we're all safe.
Yeah, we're all set. Yeah, we're good. Not any of them.
He played Cad Bane in the Book of Boba Fett.
But anyway, the Pale Man being one of the best character designs. I mean, I think the Fawn is too, and not too like because Eli knows way more about this stuff than me, but I was looking it up before. Del Toro claims that the Fawn is not Pan. Hands down, not Pan. I don't know the story behind Pan.
Fawn.
He is a fawn. And he is not.
Yeah, I think the original movie title was Labyrinth of the Fawn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So whatever you have to say about Pan is what I'm saying. Whatever you could teach us about Pan, that's fine. He's saying, though, that this fawn is not. I'm doing an Alexis thing right now.
Right. But like, I saw you with the...
is not.
But I think all fawns are followers of Pan.
Well, that's where it gets into. It's like they all like once again, like everybody. I think when they think of a fawn, thinks of Mr. Tumbly from The Lion, the Witch, and the Rover, whatever the fuck that thing's name was. But like fawns were.
Yeah, I defer to you guys on that. But like
because they were basically like in lore, Pan had sex with the moon multiple times, which like is why I found it interesting. Like she was the moon child, like which I whatever. But like you can get on that backstory. But like, and then he was like
a reference to anal play. Come on,
I didn't want to say anything, but and then like everyone's like, oh great, he's done. And he's like, nope, couple more times. And then like all these fawns showed up, and they're like, oh, we're just nature nymphs doing stuff.
Are
and
they like tricksters?
The worst of the worst.
Okay,
because like their whole thing was to either fuck you over or fuck you over to get you to Pan so he could fuck you over harder.
Oh, okay.
Like the fucking worst. Like Pan, if you look up the story of Pan, dude was a huge douche. Like the worst of the worst.
So to this point, I get what you're saying then, but like if this fawn specifically is not Pan, which it is in writing out of his mouth that it's like not, I'm just saying like, but why is it even called Pan's Labyrinth?
Well,
because they serve Pan? Like why? What?
Well, I think because like
because Americans know what it is. Oh no,
if I had to guess,
an English thing.
I think it's an English thing too, because like I think as well, like if you like look at lore sometime, a lot of fawns, regardless if they Pan or not, were referred to as Pan because they all did the same thing.
Got it.
And like Pan like wasn't like one of the other guys that like hung out on Olympus. He was like or like Zeus, where he's like every once in a while I'm gonna come down and like bang some folks. Pan was like, I'm just gonna stay on the earth and just fuck with all you and do the most horrendous shit. But then sometimes you might walk up and I'm playing my reed, like dancing in the grove. What you don't know is this is my fucking girlfriend that I tricked into turning into reeds, and then I didn't want her to run away, so I turned her into a fucking flute. But hey, look at me. Oh, I'm just a deer man.
Yeah, Pan is like a hacker trash. He was the one who was just happy being out in the wilderness.
And like just tricking people and like coveting people. So like if you want to go the third option, which and like because like all fawns basically acted like Pan. They're basically like all of his emissaries. Okay. So like they all coveted shit and like they would trick things into either basically like surrendering themselves or they would force them to, either by sacrifice, or they would just like turn them into something like, well, I own you now. Like, go fuck yourself. What are you gonna do? Like I said, Pan, like this girl was like running away from him, and like she was like, oh, he's like, he taught her how to like shapeshift basically. She's like, I'm gonna turn into a reed and like hide here in this little bundle of reeds. And then what Pan didn't tell her was like, when the wind blows, it's gonna make her whistle, which I don't know why that's a thing, but it was. And then instead of like being like, hey, I found you, you're mine now, he was just like, well, now you're never gonna run away again. And he cut those reeds, cut them into a bunch of pieces, and like made a flute. And then he like never let that flute go. And like he was known for tricking people into thinking they had to make a sacrifice to either fix something or to achieve something. But he was one of those guys that the sacrifice was never what he said it was. He was basically forcing you most of the time to either sacrifice yourself or something you love to him, because he got his fucking jollies off on it. And like at the time when like Christianity was coming in, like the folks, like the wild folks that worship Pan, like there was like a small group, and they were like basically fucking just like chaos people. Like the big fight was like their whole thing was like tricking people into sacrifice for stuff, instead of like, if you look at Christianity where it's like self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
So like if you look at the end of the story, like Ophelia was always the goal to die for Pan. He did not give 3 flying monkey farts about her brother, but he knew she wasn't gonna kill that baby. That was gonna get her out there, so something would happen to her. She was the sacrifice to Pan. Like that's where it gets fucked if you take it from like the Greek, because like he was wearing away at her, like she was never making any decisions of what she was doing with these tasks along the way. It was all a manipulation by Pan to get her there so she could be the sacrifice. And now he'll covet her.
Well, and that's not just a Pan thing. That's
a fawn. That's like a
fairy
fawn
thing. That's all of Fae is a lie. Like
right.
That's the thing that we have to understand about all fairy tales in their original stories is it's a way to entrap humans to enslave them. Like that's all of what Fae is.
The fairies,
in most places, in some places, like in Greek mythology, yes. But like if you get like the Nordic mythology, sometimes they're like, well, if you feed me bread all the time, I'll live in this stump outside your yard and protect you.
I won't mess with you.
First time you forget that fucking bread, bro, I'm gonna kill your children.
I mean, in this movie, the fairies literally lie to her face, like with the key. Like, you know, and then you're kind of like, well, now you got your heads eaten off. I mean, so God, when he eats the fairies, I'm going on tangents. When he eats those fucking fairies, for some reason, I just feel I feel like vindicated more than I feel. They just annoy me. They're cute as praying mantises, and they're ugly as little fairies. That's all I have to say.
Because even if you look at like the fawn trickery, right? Like that whole thing, like don't eat anything on the table. There was really the worst that would have came from that is that the pale man would have got her, right? Like that was the worst that would have happened. But he had her convinced, like, well, you fucked it all up. Like I can't help you now. And then the next day he's like, well, I'm going to give you one more chance. And so at this point, whatever that final task was, to get her to that final task, she was going to listen to whatever. Cause she's like, well, this is my last chance, even though it wasn't like that. That's a fawn thing. That's that's what fawns do. And like in Greek mythology, not all fawns are Pan, but Pan is all fawn. It's one of those scenarios.
But this is all only relevant if this is like really happening. If this is her escapism, it doesn't fucking matter.
Well, that's like that's
she knows tales. I know, but doesn't I believe like she knows tales of fawns and fairies, and like we know she reads. We know she reads a lot of fantasy things. Like we get that. Like this is what she knows. So a fawn is going to come to her because this is like what she knows. If you're going the route that you're saying, this third or worse A or whatever you were saying in the beginning, like then we have to believe that this is all actually happening. All of it. Right. Right? No, right? Like we have to believe that this is all legit. Like literally. We're
almost to talking about the ending of this movie. But before we get there, I do want to give the opportunity for everybody to kind of share what is your favorite character or creature, whether it's a character or a creature in this movie,
mine already.
Because there's a ton in here.
Mine's the Pale Man. I adore him. Yeah, he's behind me as a toy. Well, so is the Fawn. I mean, I love them both.
That's so provocative because obviously he's a very popular a choice for sure.
He's fucking creepy in the simplest of ways because there's really not. He is a simple design, but the moment
he's up to no good, yeah.
The moment he puts those fucking hands to his face, like the first time I saw that, I said, "What the fuck?" in the best of ways. Like I just was like that, and I literally said, like, what goes through Del Toro's brain? Like I don't know if he's based on something. Eli, you could tell me. Dave, you could tell me. I don't know, but like all I see is that design, and I say, what the fuck in the best ways. Like the moment like he does this and it makes his face. Like I'm just like this
it's
thing.
It's the Art the Clown of this movie.
Well, I think he based off because in Greek mythology, some of the renditions of the Fates, their eyes weren't in their head. Okay. It was in their hands.
Okay.
Because they needed to see as they wait. Like, oh my God, I could do a 9-hour podcast on this movie.
It's like, it's just creepy. Yeah. And then we, thanks to Doug Jones being a skinny, tall guy who has that body shape to do this. Like,
yeah, one of the things that Guillermo has talked about in several interviews is that the Pale Man is sort of the evil rendition of Stigmata. Like he's the opposite of Stigmata. If you're not familiar, Stigmata is the process where within in the Catholic faith, a saint can get the marks of Christ on their hands and stuff like that. Well, he's sort of the abomination of that, where he's got his eyes in his hand, which means he's consuming all things through his hands instead of self-sacrifice. He's actually out there consuming all of the things in the world.
I love him. So. We also didn't even mention how he eats fucking children. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not like they literally show a pile of fucking kids' shoes. Like, it's just like he is. That's
like, what he does.
He's fucking creepy as hell. Like, he's just like that. Like,
yeah, this feast that he's got spread on his table is not for him. It's to bait children into what he's doing.
Amazing. It's amazing.
He's evil on top of evil. What about you, John?
Favorite character? I see. Well, without the Pale Man on the board, that's everybody's go-to. I mean, the Fawn is fine. It just didn't really. I mean, he's fine, but I guess for me, one of the more memorable characters is either the Doctor or Mercedes, and obviously they're the double agents. They're the ones
got
going
the most at stake for sure.
Oh, for sure. And just the way they extend themselves and to the care of the mother and the daughter Ophelia, they're clearly colored and shaped to make you just constantly like feel and relate to them. All similar to a fairy tale. Like all the characters are very fairy tale. They're not just evil; they're super evil. If they're good, they're super good, or they're super innocent. I mean, so it is a modern fairy tale, and I mean, that's probably the best part about this is all the characters in general, just because they're all well written for this type of story. But no, that's why we need more monsters. Because if we had more monsters, I have more to pick from. Because I'm not picking that stupid toad, and I'm not going to pick the fairies because I'm with Jamie. The weird humanoid changing shape thing's gross.
I just hate fairies, but like I
you
also
need
wonder
the stick bug versions.
I don't know like most of the actors in this movie because like they're Spanish movie actors and I don't see a lot of like Spanish movies, but I wondered and I didn't do the research if the guy playing like the captain, if he's won anything for this role, because it is beyond, this role is beyond his portrayal of this guy is
did you recognize this is the same guy that was in Quentin Tarantino's the Western he had in the Blizzard.
It's like the only one I haven't seen, actually. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know. Anyway, sorry, I interjected about him, but you guys.
Oh, he's there to hate. Like, that's his whole thing.
But he's great at it. Like every once in a while, you get like he is just. It's ridiculous.
Because the weird thing is about him, you're there to hate him. Like Guillermo has written him to be the person that you put all of your disdain and hate on, but he's also at the same time a completely tragic character. Like we have all of this background about his father and sort of. He never had a choice to be the person he is because of his upbringing. And that's not an excuse as much as it is of he made the choice to be like his father and he expects his son to be just like him. And that's what makes that ending where she says, oh, he will never know you existed. so powerful of like, we're finally going to break this completely toxic and hateful and violent history within who you are and what you think is valuable by making sure that your son doesn't know anything about you, which is fantastic.
Fate versus Destiny, bro. Oh my God. This movie.
Who's your favorite character? Who's your favorite character?
Me, it's the Fawn, because when you're first introduced, he's like this old, like kind of rickety, like overgrown, whatever. And as you climax and his patience start to wane, he becomes less like, I'm just like a tree fawn guy. And like, he becomes more of the Fawn and like, oh, so good. So good. And like, you tell he don't give a shit about no one.
Yeah. He's not there to make friends. And he's also not there to be the sort of the benevolent guide for Ophelia. She's either going to do what he tells her to do or she's not. And he doesn't really care. If you don't, then you're fucked. If you do, then I'll help you. It's very transactional in the way he's doing it. Mm-hmm. I think for me, and the funny thing is, and I think John mentioned this, I think the one that was most impactful for me was Mercedes, because she is so in charge of what's happening unapologetically without anybody knowing it. Mercedes is the one that's controlling the story from start A to B. She's in no way compromised kind of her belief system and her expectation and what's happening around her. Now that puts her in some really bad situations, but at the end of the day, she's the one that gets to make the decision that Captain Vidal's son will never know that he exists, and take on the responsibility of dealing with Ophelia's body. I think she is sort of the most compelling.
I love Mercedes.
Yeah.
She needs to get better at lying. Every scene where she has to lie, if this wasn't a movie, I'm like, dude, like she won't even look at him in the eyes. Like, you know what I mean? Like he asks her if it's the only key and she basically just like stumble. Like she does the one thing you don't do. It's like, and I get it. It's a movie, whatever. But it's like, we know she's lying. So like she could have been a better liar in the movie because like, just every time he asks her something, like when he gives her the drink at the end of the night and like he's telling her whatever, and I forget what he's telling her about at that point, but like she just won't even look at him. Like that's a sign of lying. Make eye contact, lady. Make it. Because she's just like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a purity that it seems like Guillermo's kind of protecting for her, of saying when she lies, she's bad at it because she's so pure.
Yeah, but like it hurts because she's so like she's
because she's in a situation that is completely untenable.
Yeah,
she should be dead. I mean, literally, they had a torture scene for her. The only reason she got out of it is because she was capable.
Because he luckily tied her hands also in front of her body, not behind the post. Because
exactly,
if she was tied behind the post, we'd have a much different situation there. Oh God, I love when she slits his mouth like the Joker. Like I just can't. Like there's these scenes in this movie. Like we talk about, it was the first thing we brought up was the the face smashing with the bottle. I was mixing my words, but like it for a movie that like, because the fantasy, like even when we're in the real, it has like these moments of just complete like bizarre, like smashing someone's face in with. I love when and then
ultra violence,
and then he just finds the rabbits, and he's just like, you should have searched harder. Like I just fucking can't. But like the same thing with her slicing his mouth. It's like not even that fantastical, but like it is. Like she literally, like they literally in this movie have her put a knife to someone's mouth and just like slice it from like and it's just like.
Yeah.
It's great.
After she stabbed him in the front and the back, she slits his mouth open.
Which he doesn't sew up later. He only worries about his mouth. His body is just fine. He just keeps going like.
Well, like I also found it interesting because in Greek mythology, many of those who fell to the hands of fate were marked by fate. And arguably him and Ophelia had the worst fates in the movie, and they both were marked. Like she had that mark on her shoulder, which is why Pan said, or the Fawn said she was chosen, and then he was marked on his face, and like they both arguably suffered the worst fates of the film.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Vidal he's not a tragic character. You're supposed to hate him, but his fate, to your point, Eli, is sort of set. I mean, he literally exists within this room that looks like the inside of the clock that he carries, the watch that he carries. There's all the gears around him and in the background and all that. So you're obviously led by Guillermo to believe that this is a guy who's not going to change. He's beyond the capacity of being aware of his sort of fate and sort of his lot in life. He's going to be what he's going to be. So the only thing to do with that kind of person is to disassemble them, which is what Mercedes does.
Right. And like I said, I like that was such an interesting thing because like if you look like a Mercedes, like you would argue she had destiny because like she was destined, she's the hero. But then you look like who had fate, like their choices, what happened to them was never in their control. Like they were going to meet their ending one way or the other. Like it's oh my god, it's such a, like if I could kiss Del Toro in the mouth for this movie, I slipped a little tongue.
He'd say no, thank you.
Yeah, he'd say yeah.
You don't know
the scene where he makes the stuttering guy count to 3. Like
it's so awful.
It's like, oh my god, what a dick move! Like I just like everything he does in this movie is perfect villain of like just fucking
He is so masculine hate. Like he is the very epitome of masculine violence.
Oh my god, he's out of control.
And like it's crazy too because if like it's messy vibes, but he always looks impeccable until he's fucked up. You know what I mean?
All
like
that matters is the way he is perceived.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, that
always.
was such a like which makes some of those scenes even more impactful. Like he beats that guy to death with a bottle and he doesn't even have a hair out of place.
Yeah.
And like he walks away like it was nothing. Like it's such a crazy scene.
Okay, we've waited long enough. It's time to actually get into the ending of this.
Oh, we haven't discussed it? I thought we haven't like literally said what happened.
Probably.
Because this is a movie that the ending of it's important and it isn't in that it's a fairy tale. But I do want to talk about sort of each of my friends, the hosts of this podcast, kind of what your perspective is on the ending of this movie. And I'll start with Eli. It's sort of, what do you think the ending of this movie is? And I know that's a big story.
It is. Honestly, I think like I think ultimately it was an illusion by a child to survive the world, that her dying breath was her being in a better place. But part of me always goes with the worst one where it's like she's now coveted by the fawn forever. Like that was her, like she was tricked. But like I said, I have 2, but like realistically, it was just a sad illusion that she was trying to
just escape
her world. But there's part of me, it's like another victim of the fawn.
He wins.
He wins again.
John, thoughts on the ending? And again, blowing my mind. Almost 20 years later, your first watching of this movie. What did you think of the ending of this movie? What did you take?
I mean, he didn't hide the ending. He shows you up front, so you know where we're gonna go. Which kind of does take a little bit of the shock out of it. But it's one of those things where I think everything. It depends, I think, on the person, and it's well crafted enough, kind of like you've gone back and forth. But I choose to say it's all happening, whether it's in her head, whether it's all happening at once, and it just is. I personally, I prefer the I guess as you like called it, the worst A, where it is all happening for her, but nobody else can see it, and they kind of allude to that at the end, where she's standing there having this conversation with the fawn, and he shows up. But yeah, no, I mean, it's well crafted, and I think it's done in a very, it's open to interpretation, but also for every person, it's not. It's their interpretation, and that's what's always going to be their truth. So it's well done. I mean, it's a beautiful movie, and it's a shame that they had to do a makeup with Shape of Water, because this was like, this is a truly special movie.
Right. Yeah, it's important. Like, and you say this sometimes, but I agree with you, John. This is a movie that, for the history of film as an art form, I think this is one of those movies that makes the cut. This needs to be in the arc of sort of what we as a human race put forward as saying this is a great example of our capacity to tell a story.
Well, to John's point, I would argue this is one of the few movies where the ending is debatable and no one is truly wrong.
Mhm.
Like, he crafted the story so well that even I can't even sit there and be like for certain say like, well, no, like look at this and this is how you know what the ending was. Like, he crafted it so well that I'm like, yeah, that's what John thinks. And yeah, that's what he thinks.
Yeah, you can't disregard what somebody else's experience of the story is. So because it's her playlist and she gets to have the last word, I'll share my perspective on the ending and then I'll hand off to Jamie.
Right.
You know, the interesting thing to me is after the death of Ophelia, you know, obviously, and I do think that's exactly what happened. She died. I don't think there's any arguing that. But then for the faun in the narrative soundtrack that happens after her death to talk about, and then the fig tree bloomed for the first time in 100 years, or whatever it is that he says. And then we actually have that picture of the fairy as a stick bug on the limb. And then we had the first blossom of this tree where the toad had lived, blooming for the first time. And that is the point at which David, as a literature guy and as a person who is very jaded at this point in my life, realizing that this entire story is a fairy tale. And what I know of fairy tales is they are there to make me behave in a way that is beyond and counter to my best interest. Like, this entire story is to lead me to behave in a way that is outside and counter to what's best for David. Like the fact that the faun is he is sort of the introductory narrative, and he's the ending narrative of telling you everything's going to be fine. And then it tells me to act in a way that is completely counter to what is in my best interest as a human being. That's what fae is. That's what a fairy tale is. And it is so heinous and evil and dangerous that
worst day, bro.
Sort of when I made the decision that that's the way I'm going to read Pan's Labyrinth, this is the most dangerous story because obviously, like I said, I love Spirited Away. I love My Neighbor Totoro. I love all of what Miyazaki has done. I love, Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland and all he's done there. And then I have to sit with the fact that those stories are there to make you behave in a way that is counter to what's best for you as a human being because it's fae. And make the decision as a human being of, am I okay with surrendering to the fact that I'm going to believe in a thing that is bigger and more magical than the mundane that's around me? Or am I going to run from those things in order to do the most mundane and practical and boring things possible and accept that? That's a heinous decision to make. And I think Guillermo del Toro and Miyazaki and J.R.R. Tolkien do a really good job of making that decision really, really hard for me as somebody who's living in the mundane world. Having to make the decision is the 9 to 5 fucking job that I have more actually important than believing in some sort of magical or compelling story that's above and beyond who I am as a human being? Or do I accept that if I choose those things, those fantastical things, that I am going to put myself in harm's way? this and maybe 3 other movies are the ones that make that decision really fucking hard for David. That's all I've got to say. Jamie?
Mine's not going to be as because mine's not going to be as eloquent as Dave's, but like, so I choose to believe when I watch this movie, the way I enjoy it, because we're talking about a tragic ending in so many different ways. Like, we said, it shows us her dying. So, but I take this movie as, and you had just mentioned, I wasn't even thinking like at the narration. It does start with a narration, it ends with a narration. So my view of this movie is like, narration aside, I am being told a fairy tale about this girl. As we have mentioned, fairy tales are not fair, especially old fairy tales. They're not Disney fairy tales, the original fairy tales. Yeah. So I'm being told a fairy tale about this girl. But now I'm going in. The fairy tale I'm being told, in my view, is a girl who is escaping reality in a fantasy world. And I believe that everything she's doing in this movie is her escapism. It's her handling what she's going through, the trauma, the dramatic event, like her mother, everything. The real world. The real world in this fantasy world. She obviously dies in the end. Now I'm just saying what happens in the movie. She gets shot. That is a fact. She gets shot in the movie. We are shown her dying on the floor. Cut to, we are shown her being welcomed in her as a princess to her father and her mother and all this stuff. And like, I believe that she's sending herself to a happier place as she's dying. She's seeing what she wants to see. She has gotten there. But keep in mind, we cut back to her dying, her last breath, and like dying in Mercedes' arms.
She's dead either
So
way.
in my mind, it's showing you like she has given herself peace, whatever that may be. But it's not real. We're cutting back to what's actually happening, and she is fucking dying in this woman's arms. She is dead because I think she takes her Mercedes starts hysterical crying. And it's just like, she gave herself her happy ending. Fairy tales are not happy. They're all fucking tragic. This girl dies. Heroic, if that's, the case. She saves her brother, whatever.
But
and
the
then
fig dream blooms.
But I feel like that's a fairy tale telling me like, her remnants on Earth, she will always, if you know where to look, you will see her. Like, it is a fairy tale, but it's like a fairy tale but the fairy tale I'm being told is of a girl who in real life is dealing with real things and escaping.
And got shot.
And got shot. So it's like leveled like that. I don't even mean like that, but it's like a lot of movies have like narration, So it's just like, I am being narrated to, whether it's by a real person or not. That's not what I'm not even equating my narrated fawn to the fawn in the movie. Like, I'm not. It's like, I'm being narrated to a story that I'm getting that story. And then I'm getting my conclusion as if I'm reading a fairy tale or getting like a book or whatever. But the story I was told, she very much dies in an unfortunate way and does not have she's given herself peace in her mind. She gets to go to her, that's her last vision. Cut to Mercedes hysterical crying because this poor young girl just died in her on the floor, and like that's me.
But the heinous finality of this movie is the sort of the morality of what Pan's Labyrinth is telling you is that it is better for you to sacrifice yourself for another.
Yeah.
Well, if I can add a little corkscrew, Jamie.
I thought we were allowed to. I thought it's whatever ending we want. You're gonna.
It is. No, it's whatever you want.
Me?
No, I'm not correcting you. I just want to add a little corkscrew to that.
What?
To build off Dave, I think where I go with Wersay, Pan just wanted that, or the fawn just wanted that tree to grow, and he sacrificed her for it to bloom. And they kind of, in my mind, broadcast that a little bit early when he tricks her into putting a mandrake under her mother's bed, which in lore, mandrakes sap the energy to grow into a plant person.
Yeah, but she gets better when she puts the plant. She doesn't die until they burn the plant.
Because when in lore, when a mandrake binds with you, you are bound until the mandrake kills you.
Listen, you can tell me whatever you want, but to my point earlier is this girl, Ophelia, reads fairy tales. She's
That's
whatever.
true.
Like her
That's true.
fantasy world is based on these things that you're telling me because
She
this is
knows
what
the
she
rules,
knows.
yeah.
That's
Like
true. That's
if
true.
I'm going to create a fantasy world right now, I mean, you know, maybe mine has things I know, like Art the Clown and
Right.
puppies and whatever.
And
And like
unicorns.
and unicorns. But what I'm saying is she's creating based on like the things that she knows and she watches reads, sorry, not watches, like reads and whatever. And like her fantasy world is going to be based on what she has been reading about. For all I know, the last book she read was about fawns and princess. Like
Hey.
and so now she's
You could be right. That could just be a potato. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to say, I just want to add that little, I just want to put my little Eli nugget in your brain. So that way, when you think about it, you just hear me go,
I'm still sticking with mine because I don't know shit about fawns and pan. So like
And
that's
your
lost
ending
on me
has
anyway.
huge
So you
impact
have
on
to say that my ending or my takeaway from the movie has to be based on my knowledge. And my knowledge does not involve any of these things of what fawns actually their motive is.
Right.
Really.
I'll teach you.
Well, on that point, the actual Dave's Critter Corner is big surprise on the fawn. So I have a couple of fun little facts about this, and obviously, in the Campfire Tales, this may be something that Eli talks deeper onto, or maybe not. But the fawn itself is sort of a compelling creature. It's sort of a tragic creature, but it is also very powerful in what it can and can't do. It is a mythological creature, obviously. It is half goat, half man. It is often confused with the satyr, which is a completely different creature that is also half man, half goat. We got a goat issue with humanity.
Yeah, don't we have a lot of half men, half goats? Isn't like
Apparently.
Baphomet a half man,
Exactly.
half goat?
We have a lot of half man, half stuff.
Yeah,
For some reason, this world.
Yeah, but we have a lot of goats. Like it's a lot.
And if I were to guess, and I don't know what Eli's opinion on this is, Baphomet, I would say, would lean more to the fawn side than he would the satyr side. I would 100%. Say because of what he does. But they are very different. They have very different mythologies between satyrs and fawns. The Roman and Greek mythology reference to the god Pan, who is referenced here in something you mentioned it earlier, Jaime, is a fawn. I think because we're dumb Westerners, we needed this movie to be called Pan's Labyrinth rather than The Labyrinth of the Fawn, which is what Guillermo del Toro's original movie.
Well, it's at the end of the movie too.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that is the name of the movie. If you buy a Spanish poster,
it's Labyrinth of the Fawn.
Might be. Oh no, mine says Pan's Labyrinth. But yes, it says Labyrinth of the Fawn when you buy the Spanish.
Which is actually more accurate because there's no way in hell the labyrinth or the fawn at the labyrinth in Spain is Pan. It's a fawn, a follower of Pan, who is guarding this labyrinth. Anyway, lots to be said there, but we've run out of time. They live in the wild woods. They are a wilderness creature. They are actually probably one of the most wildling gods of Roman and Greek mythology because they have no interest in living with the gods. They have all interest in living among nature. That's what they are most interested in. They have the most enjoyment of horrifying lost men. Like they enjoy the ability to take lost men and trap them into being enslaved or moved into the fairy realm as their captives. They live in wild woods. They have a reputation for being just very manipulative, but manipulative in a way that is positive. And I know that's a weird word to say. They have no interest in hurting humans, but they have a lot of fun in manipulating humanity. Like they just enjoy for entertainment, fucking with people's lives. That's what fawns do. They prefer the company of women, which is interesting. But unlike satyrs, which is sort of an annoying comparison that is made with fawns and satyrs. Satyrs are womanizers. Like they try and manipulate and enslave women. Fawns don't have that interest. They just enjoy the company of women more than men for whatever reason. They love music and art. They are sort of the patron gods in Roman mythology of the arts and of music. And to the point Eli made earlier about the pan flute that his girlfriend was made of. They do love music, and it's a big part of what they do, and they are contributors and guardians of music and arts. They are said to be guardians of masters of all wild animals, like they are known to be sort of the guardians of the forest, protecting all of the wild animals of the forest. They are associated with, especially in Roman culture, they are associated with fertility, natural wealth, and growth. And I think, and y'all can argue with me if you want, I think that's the perspective of the fawn that Guillermo is most looking at here, because, and we didn't go deep into this, but I think any of our audience or listeners that listen to this, I think if you watch this movie, it's pretty on the nose that most of this movie is about fertility and childbirth and growth.
And did we ever look at the poster, which I didn't even notice till today when I saw someone put it on the internet? Yeah. It's a vagina. It's a glowing vagina.
Yeah.
That she's walking into.
Yeah. When she
How did
opens
I
the
never
book,
see this? How did I never see this before?
When she opens the book, I think it's before the second task. It's just a giant uterus. The blood, like it's a giant bloody uterus.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to, but when Dave said that all that, and we didn't even talk on that, like the poster too is like.
Yeah, this is very much female reproduction is what this story is. And I won't spoil it, but there may be a host within the Wicked Wild podcast that is going to be presenting the Devil's Backbone later this year on this, where we'll talk about the masculine perspective on a lot of this stuff. So, but this movie is very much from I wouldn't say a feminine perspective, but a lot of feminine ideology and symbology is used in Pan's Labyrinth. And I think a lot of it is feminine in perspective. And as much as Guillermo del Toro as a male is filmmaking this, I think he does a really fantastic job. But again, I'm a male. I can't talk to this. Jaime can talk more about this than I can. I think he does a pretty compelling job of getting to a feminine perspective on this sort of circumstance.
Agreed. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to.
Okay. Well, that's my critter for the week it's Pan's Labyrinth. We had to talk about the font. On that point, Eli, what are we talking about in Campfire Tales to follow Pan's Labyrinth?
I thought about talking about fawns and Pan, but this is Jaime's block. I want to celebrate Jaime. Jaime likes fun stuff.
I do like fun stuff.
Jaime and I
fun stuff.
Not fun stuff. Fun stuff. Jaime and I enjoy talking about swamp stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You, me, and Jaime enjoy talking about desert stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like Jaime really likes. Jaime really likes this silly stuff. So I thought, what better way to end Jaime's block than talk about maze stuff?
Maze stuff.
Maze stuff. Stuff in mazes.
Stuff like the month May.
No, like mazes.
Like getting
stuff
lost
in mazes.
Not like corn, thank God.
I was about to say that.
Not corn maze.
Oh no, I was going to say we're going to talk about a corn maze, not maze. Wait, so not the word.
Now you're you're having me thinking about this.
Like a maze.
Should we be talking about maze? Oh my God, Jaime! I'm changing my mind. People were talking about maze. No, we're going to talk about maze stuff. That way we can celebrate Jaime and end on a stuff note.
On a stuff note. Fair enough. Well, thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, I said this at the top of the podcast, and I genuinely mean it. I've really enjoyed getting to experience Jaime's. And I've joked before in some of the other movies that we talked about, but I'm not even saying these are Jaime's favorite movies, but these are the movies that she wanted to share with us as the hosts selfishly. And then obviously with our audience as a more broad people, that she wanted to share with us within the things that matter to her. And I've really enjoyed that. There's movies that I may have gotten to at some point, but they wouldn't have mattered as much if Jaime hadn't recommended them to. And we joked about Feast and even Hatchet too. But I've really enjoyed getting to go through these movies with her and have a conversation about why in hell did you put Feast on the list, and having that conversation. Those are the kind of things. Now, obviously, something like tonight, I get it, because obviously I'm eat up with the lore and the legend and sort of who this filmmaker is and what he's doing with these kind of movies. But I've really enjoyed it. And Jaime, I sincerely want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought, when you came up with this like idea, which is like great, I was like, what falls in theme, but represents me, like while falling in theme. Again, for the billionth time, I was not going to force everybody to watch Terrifier, and we've touched on other favorite movies. We have watched Jaws on this show. We have watched Evil Dead 2013. We've watched Cabin in the Woods. You know what I mean? Like Crawl even. So it's like, but I'm pretty happy with what we came up with for this little foursome. And I think it pretty accurately, if people didn't know by now, what camp I come from in this podcast.
You are a creature and buckets of blood person. Yeah, exactly. So on that point, let's give a little sneak peek of who our next block is going to be moving forward. And that's going to be my boy, John. Is going to be giving us. So tell us, John, what do you have in store for our audience for the next 4 weeks to follow up the Campfire Tales that Eli just talked about?
Well, just hope you're all fans of WWE.
What?
We're going to get 4 weeks of a cage match.
Ooh.
I don't know if we could just say what the cage match is, but just know that it's coming and you're going to be in it. And there's people that are going to cry. There's people going to be sad. I don't know if anyone's going to be happy at all. So
there will be anger. There will be tears. And there will be a lot of fun. So,
there will be bees.
Look forward to in the next 4 weeks as we get into John's cage match. And that's all I'm giving you this week. You'll see what that means when we move forward. We do thank you for listening. We do appreciate your time. We do appreciate you sharing this experience with us. We do ask you to subscribe. If you are interested in what we're doing here, rate the show, give us a comment. If you want to visit our website, it's thewickedwild.com. We have book reviews and movie reviews and some other fun stuff on there that you can check out. If you want to follow us in social media, you can do that on X at Wicked Wild We Are, Slasher, which is the horror only community at Wicked Wild We Are there as well. And then Instagram at Wicked Wild Pod. And then if you want to actually see our experiences and our opinions of each other as we in our body language, you can do that on YouTube. Just look up the Wicked Wild Podcast and you'll see the full reviews and the Campfire Tales, as well as some fun shorts that we break out and put together and put on YouTube as well. If you have any questions or feedback or any other ideas that you want to share with me or the host, you can do that on our email, podcast, BODCAST at thewickedwild.com. Any other thoughts or anything else we want to promote real quick? Because I know Jaime and Eli have been quickly building a new regime, a new empire that they're building within Campfire Tales. Anything else to promote as of today?
Oh, not yet.
Not yet. But I will just say,
TBD.
Each Campfire Tale you leave her and I alone, magic happens.
Damn it. I regret it every time it happens.
Well,
but I know y'all are having fun. So as the last movie in Jamie's recommendation or playlist to us, I do have one last question for you. Jaime, why was Ophelia's mother so upset with her when she returned with the dress? Any ideas?
Wait, is this a joke? You have a joke answer for this, right?
No, not at all. Because it was covered in toadstools.
Oh my God, just the worst. Absolute worst.
Good night.
Shame.